Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A Speech a Week. Apologies for the time change. Things happen. I'm a working actor myself, and my schedule changes at the drop of the hat sometimes. And so today we are a little bit later. But for those of you joining live, really good to see you. If you're watching this back, thank you for returning. If it's your first time here, my name's Pippa. I'm a professional actress. I trained at Bristol Old Vic Theatre School with the old guard back in the day, and I've worked in theatres and film and voiceover and telly all over the UK, and I really enjoy Shakespeare. I think it's a good challenge, and I think it's something that we shouldn't be intimidated by. And so, as a working class Essex woman, I have taken it upon myself to flood YouTube with me rambling on and reading sonnets, speeches, and all of that jazz. So, we're on A Speech a Week at the moment, which is my new thing since the A Sonnet a Day project that I did. And we're currently working our way through Mark Antony's speech in Act 3, Scene 2 of Julius Caesar. So a couple of weeks ago, we looked at Brutus's speech, quite a big chunk of text and his rhetoric. Then last week, we looked at Antony, his friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears speech. And we got to the point where the plebeians, the multitude of plebeians, well, plebeian 1, 2, 3, and 4, step in and have their little say. And Antony goes on to carry on his somewhat emotional scene at Caesar's funeral. So I'm not going to go into it too much. If you want a bit more detail about the beginning of this scene and the speeches, you can look back at the other videos. I will link those. Beautiful thing about this being live is you get my wonderful sneezes throughout the sonnets. I get bad allergies, and today is no different to usual. So here we go. Anyway, I'm going to read the chunk of text we're going to look at today. So it is actually line 118, and we're only going to do a little bit today, because in case you can't tell, although I've got allergies as well, I am quite under the weather, and I've had a really long day paneling, and I've got loads of more paneling to do this week, like auditions and stuff. I'm not building a fence or anything. And so I want to kind of keep it short and sweet. And what we will do is look into the rest of this speech next week. So we've got a bit of a running theme. And if you like that, if you like doing a scene over a few weeks, do let me know if there's any scenes that you like that maybe do have some good chunky monologues in them, or maybe dialogue that you think would be really interesting. You can drop me a comment and let me know below, and I will take that on board and hopefully try and fit it in. So, yes, I'm going to read Act 3, Scene 2, line 118, just up until plebeian 4, who says, "We'll hear the will. Read it, Mark Antony." And then they're all like, "Yeah, read it, Mark." Just to lift it off its page. I'm not here to wow you with my acting. I'm purely here to offer a lifting of the words for you. So let's give it a go. I'm holding the whole thing here, so my eyeline isn't exactly where I put it if this were a self-tape, but hey. Let's have a go then. So Antony's just done the Friends, Romans, countrymen speech. He's made a beautiful display of being too emotional to speak. And he said, "Bear with me, my heart is in the coffin there with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me." And then the plebeians have a little bit of a vocal melee about what's going on, and urge him to hurry up again and come back, and they empathize with him, which is exactly what Mark Antony is wanting. And then he goes on to say, "But yesterday the word of Caesar might have stood against the world. Now lies he there, and none so poor to do him reverence. Oh, masters, if I were disposed to stir your hearts and minds to mutiny and rage, I should do Brutus wrong and Cassius wrong, who you all know are honourable men. I will not do them wrong. I'd rather choose to wrong the dead, to wrong myself and you, than I will wrong such honourable men. But here's a parchment with the seal of Caesar. I found it in his closet. 'Tis his will. Let but the commons hear this testament, which, pardon me, I do not mean to read, and they would go and kiss dead Caesar's wounds and dip their napkins in his sacred blood, yea, beg a hair of him of memory, and dying, mention it within their wills, bequeathing it as a rich legacy unto their issue. Excellent. Hello, Ernest, you made it. Rodney as well. Yeah, I think it's quite a good idea, actually. Let's stew on that one. I did think about reading the whole play, like just out loud and just reading it, but you kind of need to do it with other people, I think. Anyway, welcome, chaps. Thank you for joining. Apologies for the time change again. I know it's inconvenient. There we go. I was breaking that up a lot. I'm not going to lie. I'm very foggy-headed at the moment. I've sent all sorts of silly emails out that I shouldn't have done, and like not been able to do my admin very well at the moment. But that's the next chunk that we were looking at. And I think it's a really clear example of how Antony is working the crowd and absolutely manipulating the situation. So if you haven't seen the other speeches that we've worked through with Brutus and Mark Antony, you'll see that, well, just to fill you in, Brutus's rhetoric and his way of speaking isn't as eloquent. Shakespeare's written it in prose for a start. Mark Antony's verbiage is written in a poetic format, in blank verse, and already that kind of gives you a bit of a status idea. Mark Antony is well educated. He knows how to work the room. He's gone to Eton College. He's absolutely part of the Conservative Party. And then you've got Brutus, who maybe is a little bit less eloquent, maybe not as charming, but also has, quite important things to say and beliefs to say, but he just can't quite manage it very well. And therefore, the dynamic between these two characters is very, very interesting. I'm not sure Antony is part of the Conservative Party, but I do think he's absolutely bullshitting right now, and at least trying to get his own way. So let's actually have a little look at this text. It does, like I said, I was absolutely chopping it up. That's not how to act it. If you're an actor watching this back thinking, oh God, that's rubbish, please, I understand. I know it was. But like I said, I was just trying to lift it off the page. So there's lots of lovely rhythm in this chunk of the text. It's still in the poetic form, and there's lots of lovely words in there, which I'm not sure I made enough of a meal of that first reading. But this is the restart. So cleverly, like I've already touched on, Mark Antony has said he can't talk anymore. His heart's in the coffin. I've got to give myself a minute to come back to myself. A very noble, humble thing to show people, but he's probably also potentially like giving Brutus a little knowing look, like, haha, they're eating out the palm of my hand. And then he goes on. So let's just translate all of this stuff then, because this is where I think it doesn't get complicated, but I don't know, it's a little bit more, there's a bit more to it, I would say. But yesterday, the words of Caesar might have stood against the world. Now lie he's there. See, can't talk. Now lies he there, and none so poor to do him reverence. So let's have a quick look up of reverence, actually. Oh, I looked it. Got it up here. Oh, that's convenient. So it says here, deep respect for something or someone. Regard or treat with deep respect. So if you give someone reverence, you are, being very humble around them, I guess, and bowing to them, giving them that respect that they perhaps deserve. And I think what Antony is saying is that no one is so poor to do him that. No one's doing that. Why aren't we giving him the credit that he needs? Also, feel free to interject if you've got other ideas or thoughts to add at any point. Ernest and Rodney know the drill. But if you are watching this later in the recording, please type below. I'd love to hear from you. And he starts it with, but yesterday. So yesterday, the word of Caesar. So he's disembodying him. He's taken the name away from the person at the moment as well. Another clever thing that Mark Antony does. The word of Caesar might have stood against the world. So he's saying, yesterday when he was alive, that word might have carried that weight and stood up against everyone. But, and there's a lovely colon there, which changes the kind of, brings us to the present, literally. He says, now lies he there, and none so poor to do him reverence. None of us are, it's an odd way to put it, I think, none so poor to do him reverence. None of us are so, I'm trying to think of poor. In fact, let's look up poor. Let's see if it offers any other ideas. No one's so, what do you think? No one, There's no one so, my opposite of rich, so low, I think. So lacking insufficient money to live at a certain standard, worse than is usual, expected, or desirable. Oh, it's not got all that many. Oh, here we go. So anything else? A dated term of that is used ironically to deprecate something belonging to or offered by oneself. In my poor opinion, so playing it down, considered to be deserving of pity or sympathy. So they inquired after poor Dorothy's broken hip. None of us are in such, oh, there we go, that makes sense to me. None of us are in such a bad situation that we can't offer him reverence. Humble, yes, Ernest. And I think he's full of fake humility, I was about to say then. My little big brain. I've got a lovely big brain. Yeah, I think that works. And none so poor to do him reverence. Like, the least we can all do, none of us are dead, so none of us, so why aren't we granting him some reverence? That works in my mind's eye. And that's where the first full stop of the speech lays. Lies, whatever, humbug. So, full stop. And this is something like I've been watching auditions all day and the other day as well. The punctuation, and you guys will know I've talked about this a lot, the punctuation in Shakespeare is so important. The writers who printed this, the first editions of the first folio and everything, they didn't just cut out the punctuation because it wasn't relevant. The punctuation is the key, I think, to really unlocking Shakespeare's work. Master the language, but master the punctuation, and it will only help guide you to understand it more and portray what it is your character is meaning to portray. So if there's a full stop there, it's not a question, but he is confronting, which was something we talked about in last session, he's starting to confront the audience, the group of plebeians, the mass of people that he has now got to get on his side and off the side of Brutus's. And he's already doing a really good job of that. So he's used all that dialogue, first of all, in the scene to get to that point where he can now start pointing the finger and encouraging these people, these plebeians, to think about their own actions and what they have done and their lack of humility that they are giving Caesar, this poor dead man in this time, this moment in time. So yes, we go from, now lies he there, and none so poor to do him reverence. O masters, if I were disposed to stir your hearts and minds to mutiny and rage, I should do Brutus wrong and Cassius wrong, who, you all know, are honourable men. There's the second full stop. And we've got some lovely commas in that bit, which I used properly then. And that's a lovely line. So he opens there, oh masters. He gives these plebeians who are lower status than him a friendly, not friendly, but a more formal greeting there, I would say. Oh, masters. He's really calling up on them there. Oh is a lovely vowel sound, and you'll know I go on about the vowel sounds all the time, but he's really calling upon them there. He doesn't say, oh, Romans. He calls them masters. And in fact, let's look up masters. We kind of know that if you master something, you become a pro at it. We're all mastering Shakespeare together. Let me define it. In a historical format, it says a man who has people working for him, especially servants or slaves, a man in charge of an organization or group, having shown very great skill or proficiency or a main principle. So historically, it's saying there that, it's typically servants or slaves. But I think that could work in this sense, because if you were a plebeian, you were here, but if you were a servant to Caesar, you were here, and if you were Caesar, you were here. So I think although it's technically, I suppose, historically, dictionary defined as a lower status thing, a servant or a slave, it's still higher than the average kind of workman role, the countryman role, perhaps. So I think he's really kind of calling on them to be masters of Caesar, perhaps. Ernest says yes during the movie, which, yes, we should talk about a little bit as well. 1953, the pauses speak volumes. Exactly. And we've talked about this before in maybe in some of the sonnets as well, actually. But Brutus, I think, can't quite manage the pauses. Mark Antony works the pauses. And I've definitely talked to Rodney about this in a session, the idea of pausing to think about what it is that you're going to say next actually provokes a sense of intrigue from your audience. So I just did an example then. Herbert. Hello, Herbert. This speech is so difficult to memorize and rendition it with expression and body language. Marlon Brando did such a brilliant job portraying Antony. Yes, you and Ernest can geek off on that for sure. He did such a great job, 100%. It's so, so interesting. And it's interesting as well, actually, because him as an actor and as a person, as a person, he has a real calm, rootedness to him. So it's really good casting to pop him in that role. Pop him in there. Pop him in. Hey, can you pop in and be Mark, please? And this is like, yes, but interesting, isn't it? So look at that. Like who did do it so well and why? It's because he can muster this grounded, rooted, manly, I don't know, I was about to say like husk about it. He brings so much weight to the words. He brings substance to anything he does. Yeah, he has that characteristic as a person. And so it comes through these characters really well for him. 100%. So, oh masters, if keep adding words. Oh masters, if I were to, can't speak, sorry, got distracted then. Oh masters, if I were disposed to stir your hearts and minds to mutiny and rage. So here he's saying if, and this is another clever little technique from Mark Antony here. I'm not going to, but if I did that, he's planting the seeds and slowly reaping them throughout the speech. He's so freaking clever in the way he is popping these little ideas into the plebeians' heads, as if, it's not his idea. But if you wanted to think about that, then you could do it. I don't have to talk about it. But if you did want to think about that, he's very smart. Very, very smart. I've got another sneeze coming. Excuse me. Gravitas. And this is one thing why I think Shakespeare and classical text is such an important thing for every actor, for film, TV, voiceover, whatever, to look at, is because the characters have gravitas. So often we get really kind of unfilled characters portrayed on screen these days, and people don't look at the complexity of these characters and their situations. Shakespeare's work has this meaty gravitas grit to it, which I love. Herbert A. also says, the real Mark Antony would probably prefer Marlon Brando version than himself. Oh, could you imagine? Oh, that'd have been well cool, wouldn't it? Maybe do a little scene of that. If Mark Antony saw Marlon Brando playing Mark Antony, that could be really fun. So he's saying here, if I were disposed to stir, which of course is kind of ironic and a bit passive aggressive, because he is stirring. That's all he's doing. He's not shit stirring, but he's stirring up Brutus's speech and stirring up the crowd, riling them up to turn against Brutus and Cassius and the conspirators against Caesar. If I were disposed to stir your hearts and minds to mutiny and rage, interesting, isn't it? Your hearts and minds to mutiny and rage. Such a lovely line there. Hearts and minds. Something that makes us human is the fact that we have a brain and we can communicate and we can make things, but it's our heart, it's our conscience, it's our understanding of emotions that make us humans and visceral. And he's picking up on that, to mutiny and rage. And so here he's mentioning the mutiny, which is exactly what Brutus and the whole crewdom have asked him not to do. But he's planting that seed again. And rage, he's trying to get them to that point by saying, if I were going to do that, I'd be doing this, so I won't do that. But you do feel it, right? this sneaky, smarmy, and I don't know if he's not always portrayed like that, but I think it's really like slimy. Ernest says, yeah, Paul Rubens would not be able to pull it off. Herbert says, my favourite actress of all time is Vivian Leigh, and her chemistry with Marlon still dazzles me. Amazing. I love that. I need to watch some more older films. It's been a while. Please do excuse me. So yes, O Masters, if I were disposed to stir your hearts and minds to mutiny and rage, I should do Brutus wrong, and Cassius wrong, who you all know are honourable men. Full stop. So this is the first time he actually brings Cassius into it, I believe. La 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 la. Quickly checking for Cassius. Yes, this is the first time he brings Cassius into the argument now. So he's spent the most part of the first chunk of his speech to the crowd using that wonderful phrase, and as you know, Brutus is an honourable man, and all of that. And now he says, I should do Brutus wrong and Cassius wrong. So now he's extending it further out. It's not just Brutus that is the problem, it's Cassius. And actually, it's probably all of the conspirators. So that was me being the conspirators and stuff with my hands. Trying to give you a visual aid there, not that you needed it. So really interesting, isn't it? And actually, what have you put there, Ernest? Was he trying to convey power to the plebeians by using the word masters, or was it condescending? I don't think it was necessarily condescending. I think it was more step up and show your loyalty to Caesar. You were not servants of his, but you were not close to him. I think it's more of a call to step up and rise up to support your now dead leader. That's what I if I were acting Antony, I'd probably go down that route. Obviously, I'd try all of the ways, but I think it's up for grabs, really. And like I said, I think back in those days, being the master of someone of higher status was a really, good thing to be. It meant that you had food and comfort and nice clothes and run errands and, were kind of higher up status-wise than the vast majority of people. Yeah, I would agree. Okay, cool. Interesting, isn't it? But again, you might, if you're playing Antony, you might want to be a bit of a dick. You might want to do that to the plebeians. I don't know. So yeah, he brings in Cassius, and he brings in that lovely phrase again, which is already said a billion times, are honourable men, who you all know are honourable men. And he doesn't need to say you all know, he could say who are honourable men. But he's reminding the plebeians that we all know this. It's that kind of, it's a technique that people use to get you on their side. Oh, and it's a sales technique, actually. I remember getting taught this when I was doing sales years and years ago. Most people believe this, but we all know that one of the things that we all need is to stay fit and healthy, or whatever, right? Whatever you're selling, we all know is an assumptive way to group us in together, and that's exactly what he's doing there. Who you all know are honourable men. Although actually, he doesn't say who we all know are honourable men. Now he is starting to separate from that. Interesting, isn't it? I'm sure he did that before slightly too. But him saying who we all know are honourable men is very different to who you all know are honourable men. So maybe at this point, Antony is starting to pull back a little bit and say, well, you think they're honourable, I no longer do. So all of this is just in that tiny little freaking 10-syllable line. What? Is it 10 syllables? Who you all know are honourable men. 9. Honourable men. Okay, 10. And then we've got that full stop there again. So if we use that full stop, we will pause, take a breath, allow the audience and the plebeians to take a breath as well. Talking about taking a breath, I'm feeling quite digested. And then he goes on, I will not do them wrong. I rather choose to wrong the dead. So this is interesting as well. Antony is playing that I'm too noble and honourable myself to put them in the wrong. He's starting to kind of play the opposite sides, I think, here. Ernest says, yes, the use of the non-restrictive clause highlights the irony of honourable men. Nail on the head. Absolutely. It's genius, isn't it? Like, can we just geek off for a minute about how brilliant this is? It's so well done. And it's subtle. And to the ordinary ear, if you heard this for the first time, you'd be like bought on side probably. You'd be like, yeah, I agree with this guy. I don't really know what he's done, but I agree with it. It's all down to this fantastic rhetoric. And I would love to know, can you imagine? I wonder how long it took Shakespeare to actually write this. Can't even cope. Oh my God. Right. So moving on. I will not do them wrong. I will not blame them. I will not do them wrong. I rather choose to wrong the dead, to wrong myself and you. And again, he doesn't go, I'd rather choose to wrong you. He puts them last, the plebeians last. He makes them the center of his argument by making him the last thing in his argument. To wrong the dead, so Caesar, to wrong myself and you. And if he'd said himself after them, that would have been a bit different. But he's saying, I'd wrong myself. For a man to stand up and say, I did wrong, or I'd rather wrong myself than Brutus, you'd think that he's on the side of Brutus, but he's not. So good. And you. And then we've got a comma, it carries on. Then I will wrong such honourable men, full stop. So that whole bit, just to give you the full spiel after who you all know are honourable men. I will not do them wrong. I will not do them wrong. I rather choose to wrong the dead, to wrong myself and you, than I will wrong such honourable men. And again, notice the plural now. We're into men, not man. It's not just Brutus being an honourable man. It's Brutus and Cassius being honourable men. So he's starting to widen that he's zooming out and showing us how many Death Eaters there are following Lord Voldemort, right? Yep, the order is important, 100%. Ernest also says, now we get to the wonderful point where we have to decide if Ma is reading the room or leading the room. Was his pivot planned or extemporaneous? Flipping hell, Ernest. What a word. Tell me what that means. Tell me what you think that means. Not what you think that means, but tell me how you'd word that word. Extemporaneous. Extemporaneous. What a great word. As a character. Exactly. And this is down to the actor to decide, and the director when you actually watch the whole thing. We're taking this out of context and translating it and working through it. But there is no right or wrong. Maybe in your production, you want to make him a bit of a smarmy arse. Maybe you want to make him a real noble man, and he's really doesn't want to say all of this, but he has to for the good of Caesar, for his what's right in his eyes. There's so many brilliant ways we can look at this and work through this. I love Caesar. It's such good play. And yes, Ernest says off the cuff, not planned, of course. Lovely. So yeah, that's a great word. Extemporaneous. I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this in my auditions. So yeah, where are we? I'd rather choose to wrong the dead, to wrong myself and you, than I will wrong such honourable men. But here's a parchment. And we've got another but. So he starts this bit of the speech with but, and he also brings in but again here. So it's like that, well, I'm not going to say anything. But actually, I do want to add one more thing. It's that kind of, not afterthought necessarily, it's after a full stop. But he's contradicting himself now. He's saying, I'm going to be honourable. I'm not going to wrong, I'd rather wrong myself than you. But you kind of did do it. Although that's not what he's saying here. He's saying, but I have a parchment with Caesar's stamp on it. I have an official document from Caesar. It's his will. Ernest says, I didn't have a design to use that word. It was just extemporaneous. Yeah. You've been waiting to whip that one out, haven't you? I know your story. Brilliant. I love that. So yeah, he's bringing on a prop now as well. I wanted to talk about this. because I was going to try and find one. I've got loads of sheets of paper, but none quite to hand. What have we got here? Some affirmations, some stuff about my future, some goals written down, jotted down. Mark Antony just whips out, oh, here's something, here's a visual aid to help me tell my story. And what is it? Oh, it happens to be Caesar's will. Now we're going to get personal with someone who's dead right in front of us. It's a lovely thing, again, like to keep people's attention, especially in those days, having a physical aid. The Romans and Greeks used lots of masks in their theatre, lots of colours. It's a very stimulating time to live in. And he brings out a lovely bit of paper. And why does he bring it out? Let's see. But here's a parchment with the seal of Caesar. I found it in his closet. All right. 'Tis his will. Full stop. So why do we think that, actually? Let's have a little chat about that. I don't want to drag this on too long, but why do you think he brings this out now? How does he have Caesar's will? Was he rummaging around? Is it even Caesar's will? Is it fake? All questions to be explored and decided. But it's odd, isn't it? I don't know, I think it's a little bit odd. It's like how I just delivered that, like, oh, and I've got a piece of paper, by the way, and oh my God, it's actually his will. Like that kind of idea of like feigning surprise, faking surprise. I wonder how to play this. Is it that it's, I don't know how I would do this bit and naturally move on to that. But therefore, it kind of implies to me that it isn't natural, and this is not extemporaneous. This is perhaps completely contrived, and he is ready now to reveal the will. If he was going to use it, he could have brought that out from the beginning and just said, oh, by the way, he's leaving all of you everything. So does that sound like a power-hungry madman? No, but he doesn't. He uses it halfway through his lovely long monologues. He knows when to whip it out and show the people and start showing them in Caesar's own words, after all the other micro arguments he's made, how like this is the icing on the cake. Perhaps, I think. And it says he may not. However, it conveys that he knows JC's mind and wishes. And now Mark A is the conduit for JC. Totally. Rodney says, makes a great moment if it is a little unclear. See, there's so much you could do with it. It's up to you, the actor and the director and the, everyone who's involved in the production to decide. It appears as evidence, but is it really? Yeah. How cool would it be if it wasn't actually the will? What if Mark Antony was naughty and faked the will? Let me just hide that stupid idiot who's sending me really weird spam stuff. Go away, no one cares. Hadi Mazanoe, or whatever your name is. Lovely. Right, so carrying on. But here's a parchment with the seal of Caesar. I found it in his closet. 'Tis his will. Tis his will. Oh, that would stir a bit of excitement, right? Everyone wants to know what's in everyone's will. It's an exciting thing. And we got that full stop. And remember, he's speaking to a big group of people. He wouldn't have just got a bit of paper. I'm going to fold up this one now. And been like, oh yeah, I found his will. It wouldn't be very natural like that. He would have, I guarantee you, absolutely, got it out of his robe and lifted it up. There's a reason I was starting to do that. Here's his will. It would be a big thing, right? I'm sure. I can't remember exactly what Marlon Brando did actually, but still, it's a prop. It's something exciting to see. 'Tis his will. Let but the commons hear this testament, which, pardon me, I do not mean to read, and they would go and kiss. And then this bit goes on. I didn't read this very well earlier at all. He says, let but the commons hear this testament, which, pardon me, I do not mean to read, and they would go and kiss dead Caesar's wounds and dip their napkins in his sacred blood, yet beg a hair of, I'm getting the words wrong all the way here, yea, beg a hair of him for memory, and dying, mention it within their wills, bequeathing it as a rich legacy unto their issue. So, in a nutshell, that chunk is saying, look, but pardon me, if I read this, you will all want to take some of Caesar's head, dip your napkins in his blood, kiss Caesar's head, and when you are dying, mention it within your wills, bequeathing it, the handkerchiefs and the kisses and the bits of hair, locks of hair that you cut from his head, you will bequeath those as legacies for your children and for your children's children. So what he's saying here again, he's leaving us in suspense. He's not sharing with us what's in it, but he's basically, when you're home something, do you want to read it? Oh, you can't read it. Shakespeare does this all the time in his plays. Two Gentlemen of Verona, it's like, I've got a letter. Let me read it. It's such a common thing. And in this modern age of phones and emails and everything, you don't get this as much in dramas and TV anymore because we have other ways to communicate. But can you imagine? Like, letters back in those days were real things. What Shakespeare in Love? Like, it would just reiterate like how important letters were to people. And also, not a lot of people could read. So, it was a precious thing. And if you could read, you'd want to read everything, I'm sure, because it wasn't like books were as common a commodity as they are today. Ernest says dipping napkins in blood was done with Louis XIV or XVI as well. Did they get that from JC, or was it a thing back in the day? I wonder if life imitated art. I think it was a real thing, like to keep the people that you loved around, but also from a hygiene perspective and disease perspective, I can imagine that was a pretty dumb thing to do. So I don't know, but it sounds like that was something you would do. And I kind of, people would steal shit all the time, wouldn't they? I've definitely been cursing a little bit more today. Apologies, but it's because, I've been freeing it all up all day. Excuse me. I'd like to look into that. So have a little research on that, because I certainly will. But because people, they would be like, this ring belonged to so-and-so. Isn't that amazing? There was quite a lot of status. If you were able to access the body of a king or something, like, you'd want to take a souvenir, especially in those days, right? And people traded a lot. So I personally think this is quite accurate. And this is an idea that maybe would have happened, but I do think Mark Antony is kind of bigging it up a little bit. Locks of hair is a real thing, isn't it? And parents keep their kids' baby teeth still. It's a memory. It's a form of keeping them with you when they're not there. And how much more closer can you get than a physical attribute? A tooth, a lock of hair, an eyelash. It's an eyelash. It'd be quite tricky to keep an eyelash, but I'm sure people do. I think those are real things. But also, I think his choice of using blood, sacred blood of Christ, comparing Julius Caesar, JC, to Jesus Christ, JC, like, he's making a point that his blood is sacred, and yet honorable men like Brutus and Cassius have spilt it. So he's keeping these visuals very clear. It's not just a lock of hair. It doesn't really make you think much, does it? It's a bit of fluff. Sacred blood being spilt is just plain wrong. That's what he's trying to get at here as well. And it says, the blood of saints, etc. 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 So moving along, let's read that. We're not moving along, we're going to leave it there, but reading that chunk again, let me get my Caesar's will. Let but the commons hear his testament, which, pardon me, I do not mean to read. And they would go and kiss dead Caesar's wounds, and dip their napkins in his sacred blood, yea, beg a hair of him for memory, and dying, mention it within their wills, bequeathing it as a rich legacy unto their issue. You see how that had a lot more drive to it that time? Not like the first time I read it, when I was a bit like, what am I saying? So there you have it. And then we've got another interjection from Plebeian 4. It's Plebeian 4's star turn here. We'll hear the will. Good luck saying that and not getting it wrong. We'll hear the will. Will. We'll hear the will. Read it, Mark Antony. All. The will. We will hear Caesar's will. And of course, it's called the will, but will it is literally Caesar's will. It's what he wants to do after his death. So really interesting, again, play on the situation from Mark Antony here. Now the plebeians are actively asking to know what Caesar wanted. Brilliant, isn't it? Rodney says, people kept hair art of ancestors. My mother had one spanning hundreds of years. What on earth? I'm intrigued by this. Oh, I'm going to go down a little wormhole of hair art, I think. And what did people keep from dead people back in the days? Do you remember? Well, I don't know if you guys know this, actually being not from England, but the Victorians used to actually take pictures of their loved dead ones once they died with the family. It'd be like a family portrait, but with like a dead baby in the lap. And sometimes they would even like draw on eyes onto the eyelids if they weren't open, and stand them up, prop them up. Some of the creepiest images you will ever see, but a really, really interesting thing. But losing someone and going through grief is incredibly painful, and if there's anything you can do to relieve that grief, especially back in those days, Victorians were all about stiff upper lip, you can't share your emotions, and that's where that kind of came from. But it was the same back in these days. A show of emotion, especially for men in power like Mark Antony, could either be seen as humility, which it is in this context, but also as weakness. And Brutus is the epitome of that, I think, like not being able to make decisions clearly and going backwards and forwards and getting confused with it all. Really interesting. And it says, yes, I have seen them, right? Loved it though. I did look into that for quite a while. I find it really interesting. Might write a play about it or something. And the long exposure made the dead who didn't move look clearer than the living. Creepy. Yeah, sometimes you get the, oh, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. They were not dead when they added to the palate. They were not dead when they added to the palate. I'm thinking about taste now. I'm watching Snowpiercer and it talks about cannibalism a little bit. So tell me what you mean, Rodney. I'm not sure I've quite clocked what you said there. But marvelous. So as a little treat, I'm going to read the whole thing now up until the bit where we've finished today. And next week, there might be a time change again. I will let you know as soon as I can, but I just need to confirm the dates. We'll carry on and we'll hopefully do a little bit more because I'm hoping I'll be fully well. But I'm going to read from Friends, Romans, Countrymen, Lend Me Your Ears. Again, just to lift it off and see how we can go into this. I'm not going to leave a big gap for the plebeians to do all their stuff. I am just going to go on to show how it can all be pieced together as one lovely long monologue. The art board. Ah, okay, yes, of course. What? See how my mind is not working? Oh my goodness. I got an email from my admin at the Old Vic yesterday being like, hi, you're going to need login 8. And I messaged her back saying, oh, I've only got login 7 and 8. You need to send me 4. And she was like, no, you're going to need 8. You don't need 4. And I was like, okay. Don't even know where I am. Delirious. So, didn't need to know that anecdote, but there you go. Let's have a go at reading this. I'll try not to butcher it too much in my crazy state, but we'll have a bit of fun with it. This is Mark Antony from Julius Caesar, Friends, Romans, Countrymen, Lend Me Your Ears. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones, so let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honourable man, so are they all honourable men, come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me, but Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honourable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honourable man. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and sure, he is an honourable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know. You all did love him once, not without cause. What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason. Bear with me. My heart is in the coffin there with Caesar, and I must pause till it come back to me. But yesterday the word of Caesar might have stood against the world. Now lies he there, and none so poor to do him reverence. Oh, masters, if I were disposed to stir your hearts and minds to mutiny and rage, I should do Brutus wrong, and Cassius wrong, who you all know are honourable men. I will not do them wrong. I rather choose to wrong the dead, to wrong myself and you, than I will wrong such honourable men. But here's a parchment with the seal of Caesar. I found it in his closet. 'Tis his will. Let but the commons hear this testament, which, pardon me, I do not mean to read, and they would go and kiss dead Caesar's wounds, and dip their napkins in his sacred blood. Yea, beg a hair of him for memory, and dying mention it within their wills, bequeathing it as a rich legacy unto their issue. Have patience, gentle friends, I must not read it. Gave you the next line there. So lost it a little bit there, but as you know, I'm not trying to give you like the full rounded thing of what I would do with Mark Antony, but one thing that I've pictured here that I think could be interesting, I feel like that could be directed at Brutus. The bit where he starts using they, he's not saying you will do this, you will do that, you will dip your handkerchiefs in his blood, blah, blah, blah. He's saying, but if I do that, they're gonna freak out. They're gonna do that. So maybe he's talking to the gods then. Maybe he's talking to Caesar there. Maybe there's a little act of delirium there. That could be good. Maybe he is directing it to Brutus. No, maybe he catches his eye. No, pardon me. No, I'm not going to read it. Blah 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 blah. Which, pardon me, I do not mean to read. And they would go and kiss dead Caesar's wounds. Like if I did, they're going to do this. So again, you know when parents do that thing with kids, or you do that thing to, I don't know if anyone really would, but you kind of, it's not passive aggressiveness, what is it? Reverse psychology with kids, like, oh no, they wouldn't want that. They don't like Barbie dolls, so they wouldn't want that Barbie doll. Don't worry about it. Yeah, what is it? I want that Barbie. Like, I want that. Oh no, they don't like strawberries, so she probably won't have that lollipop, but thanks anyway. No, I do really want that lollipop. You know, it's that kind of thing. So I kind of feel like, again, he's then making them think they do want to dip their handkerchiefs in his blood more and take a lock of his hair and, you know, run up to his coffin and touch him to say that they were alive when Caesar died and was alive as well. So loads to play with there, right? I would have done a little bit more today, but I'm going to have to leave it there. It's so good to see you all. Thank you so much for joining in. And if you aren't watching this live, you are watching this back, do reach out and comment and let me know any thoughts and feelings about this. It's such a good speech. If you are applying for drama schools and things, and you're like quite young, be aware of this speech. I think it's a good one to practice and learn. Might not be the best choice because I think Mark Antony is quite a grounded, grown warrior type man. But it's a really lovely speech to practice, to learn a bit about Shakespeare's rhetoric and good rhetoric in Shakespeare plays. So yeah, I mean, it's all good, isn't it? Let's be honest. But yes, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining, Ernest. I'm so glad you could make it. Enjoy your lunch date if that's happened yet or not. Rodney, I need to reply to you as well, and Ernest, I still need to reply to you, but I'll be in touch soon. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your lovely days, and I will see you hopefully next week. Keep an eye on the emails for the rest of that scene, or at least a very good chunk of it. All the best. Have a lovely, lovely rest of your day. Man, this old play never grows old, says Ernest. It doesn't. It's so good, isn't it? I might try and watch it later. Anyway, have a good one. I'll see you all very soon. Bye for now.